who are either running late or are planning on playing back the recording, they will pay attention as well. So yesterday we learned about waterfall. Does everyone understand waterfall really well? Okay. Now let's talk about, and you all understand the advantages and disadvantages, right? All right, very nice. Now let me give you an example. Have any of you taken your car to the repair shop for a state inspection or whatever? Get something fixed. To the dealership? Yes, no, maybe? That's one yes. How about you, Nehal and Nidhi? Have you ever taken? Okay. But do you know the concept of how it works? Okay. Very nice. So, how does it work? You have a problem, right, with the car. Maybe it's making a weird noise. Maybe the air conditioning is not working as well, right? You drive with the car to the dealership. Do you actually talk to a technician right away, or do you talk to a service clerk? To the service clerk, right? Guys, give me a minute. So we talk to the service clerk, right? What do? We tell the service clerk what is the issue that we are facing, right? And we give them, the service clerk will just take our keys, and he advises us that either we can wait or we can go home, and he will call us with an estimate, correct? Next, what happens? The service clerk will reach out to a technician, will explain the problem as we described it to the service clerk, right? The service clerk will take a look at the car and figure out what is wrong. Once he knows what is wrong, he lets the service clerk know. No, right? The service clerk will then put together an estimate of how long will it take to fix the car and how much will it cost you. Then the service clerk places a call to you, lets you know that this is the root of the issue, right? This needs to be fixed. This is how long it will take, and this is how much it will cost you. Of course, if it is the air conditioning, you definitely want it fixed, right? That's why you took the car there. But you must authorize the fix. Yes or no? So you authorize it. You let the service clerk know. Who in turn will let the technician know. Once the technician has the approval, the technician gets, starts working on your car. Once the car is ready, the technician lets the service clerk know. The service clerk will then call you. You come to take your car. You pay the bill. You do a test drive, and you then take the car away. Is that correct? Is that the process? All right. Now let's look at another scenario. You have a problem with the car. The AC is not working. You take the car to the mechanic shop. And what happens is a mechanic or a technician as well as a service clerk is assigned to you. So as you are talking, showing the problem to the technician, the service clerk is taking notes, right? After you have talked about the problem, the technician takes a look at the car and he analyzes what needs to be done, what needs to be fixed. And while he is saying all that, again, the service clerk is taking notes. At the end of the analysis, the technician tells, kind of gives an estimate, this is how long it will take to fix this car. and what parts need to be replaced, how much it's going to cost you, right? You approve the changes while all this conversation is happening. The service clerk has put together the recommendations on the paper, right? What are the different things that need to be changed, how much? And then as and when you approve them, he picks them up and makes the final bill for you, right? So while you are settling your bill, the technician is fixing your car. Of course, it may take a little longer than that. I mean, you may settle your bill in 15 minutes, half an hour maximum. The technician may take up to 2 hours, 3 hours to fix your car. However, at the end of which, he comes back and you, the technician and the service clerk go on a test drive. You test the AC, air conditioning, and if you're satisfied, you take the car away. Now, do you think this is also a possible scenario? Now, of the two processes, which process was shorter? Which one took less time? It is the second one. Okay? Why? Because you are not wasting time going back and forth between you and the service clerk to the technician to the service clerk to you to the service clerk, right? So all that time go between, right, is cut short. While you are talking to the technician, the service clerk is taking notes, right? So there is no miscommunication, no misunderstanding. You understand the problem, the technician understands the problem, the technician tells you firsthand what needs to be fixed, how much it's going to cost you, right? And the service clerk is making a list of all the things that need to be fixed and which ones you approve for. That's right. So in the second process, the satisfaction you get is also higher. Why? Because you are talking directly to the technician. You are not going, you're not talking to a go-between. Correct? So the second process is more efficient. Not only can you get your car repaired in 2 to 3 hours instead of an entire day, right? Because what if you are not available? What if when the technician calls you, it goes into voicemail? By the time you call when the service clerk calls you, you are on the phone with somebody else, or you're away from your phone, you're in the garden. By the time you get the message, you call the service clerk is gone for lunch, right? So you've lost more time in the first process than you do in the second, correct? So this is the difference between waterfall approach and agile approach. Waterfall approach is very sequential. All things happen in a sequence. Agile, if you notice, when you took your car to the dealership, there is no sequence that you will first talk to the service clerk who will then talk to the technician. There's nothing like that. A technician and a service clerk is assigned to you. Everything is happening in parallel, right? The planning, the estimate, the approval, and even while you are settling the bill, the development, all of it is happening in tandem. It does not mean that you are doing anything less. You're still doing the same processes, right? It's not as if the service clerk did not have to put together the list of things that need to be fixed. He still has to do it. It's just that it is happening. All the different activities are happening in parallel to each other. Does that make sense? Let's see. Okay. All right. When things happen in parallel, do you think they go faster? Yes or no? And when things go faster, they are called agile. Are you clear? With that in mind, an agile manifesto was created. The focus of the agile manifesto is that we want to improve the software development process. All right? Why? Look back to your waterfall approach. Right? There's so many variables in that approach. We have the time variable. Every project, right? The size of the project is different. The length of time, some projects will take you 3 months, other projects will take you 6 months, another will take you 4 months, right? So we have a time variable. We have the cost variable. Yes or no? And of course, we have the scope. That changes with every project, right? Every project is different. Then we have the stakeholders. So we have too many variables. And part of the reason why the project fails is because of these variables and how people react to them. Correct? Yes or no, guys? So what the Agile Alliance, what they came up with is what if we standardize, right? Or fix some of these variables instead of having these changing variables. If we fix them, then can we simply focus on creating the software? That is the prime goal, right? Creating the software. Yes or no? Now in Waterfall, our prime goal is, remember the success criteria? It must be on time, it must be within budget, and of course it must meet the project goals and objectives, right? Too much going on. Can you deal with so many different things? 3 critical things at the same time and still ensure the quality of the product? Difficult, right? So what Agile did was they simplified it. And while in the process of simplifying it, they found a way to make the software development still go faster. So just because I'm simplifying it doesn't mean that I'm also saying that it's okay to take more time. No, if I simplify it, then it should go faster, right? And that is why it's called Agile methodology. So what is different, or how is Agile methodology different? First and foremost, in Agile, we understand that the focus is on software development. It is not about documentation. Yes, you want to have documentation, right? So that you have something to reference in future. What did you build and why? Okay? However, the deliverables should only be the software. The deliverables should not be your document. So unlike Waterfall, right, where our deliverables are documents, remember we did all the enterprise analysis, we did the requirements, we had a deliverable that the design document is put together, yes or no? So in Waterfall, what we're saying is that to prove that we have done proper analysis and proper design, we should have a proper document. In Agile, we're saying that just because you have a document does not mean anything, that the software is going to be good quality. There's no guarantees to that. So we should stop focusing on something that we cannot guarantee. It is meaningless, right? It is not the software of the quality, or the quality of the software is not based on the document, all right? However, it is based on the development itself. So documentation is good. However, it is not a deliverable. Are you clear? Next, the software, whatever you build, right? Like I said, we are going to move away from the changing variables pattern. So we have a time box. We have already said that we'd plan for the entire year. All right? Say that we will have 2 releases a year. It could be 3, it could be 4, however you want your company to work. So 2 releases a year. 2 releases a year meaning how many months of development before a release? How many months of development before a release? If there are 2 releases a year. 6. Right, Nidhi? 2 releases per year is 6 months, right? Okay. Now, in 6 months, I'm even going to break it down further and say that instead of having one big project, right, every 6 months, I'm going to have small projects. Remember the concept that you should be building it in small chunks to be able to focus on quality. That's what we learned, right, in Sparrow? That is more easily manageable, right? To be able to adapt to change. So here in Agile, we will say that 6 months are broken down into, let's say, we will have 6 sprints, okay? 6 cycles of development. These cycles of development are called sprints, sprint cycle. Are you clear? Now this sprint cycle could also be, instead of 4 weeks, it could be 3 weeks. Again, it's up to the company, up to the PMO, right? But for our example, we'll just say that it is a 4-week cycle. So if I have said that every cycle is going to be 4 weeks, do I have a fixed timeline for all of my sub-projects? Or do you think the timeline changes? It is still a variable. Why does it change, Snehal? If I know that it is that I will have 6 sprints per release, right? And every sprint, no, Nehal, see, that's the thing. I haven't even talked about requirements just yet. I've already said that I will have 6 development cycles or sprint cycles per release, right? And every sprint cycle is going to be 4 weeks long. What does that mean? It means that whatever the requirements are, they should be complete. I should be able to complete those requirements in or within that fixed schedule. That's right, Nehal. So now you're fine. It's a fixed schedule. No lipsy. It's not waterfall almost. Waterfall depends on the requirement. Here, have I talked about requirement at all? No, right? So what I'm doing is I fixed my schedule. Every sprint is going to last 4 weeks, right? So I fixed my schedule. When I fix my schedule, is my cost also fixed? Yes. You know why? Because my project team remains the same. So if I'm going to have 4 sprint cycles or 6 sprint cycles in a release, then it is the same project team, right? So whatever the project team is what they're working full time, right? So 40 hours, if there are 4 to 6 people on the team, so 40 hours times 6, that is the total number of hours they work in 1 week. If there are 4 weeks in my sprint cycle, times 4 is the total number of hours that they work per sprint. If they charge $100 per hour each, times 100 is the cost of my sprint cycle. Yes or no? So my cost is also fixed now, isn't it? So did I take care of 2 out of the 3 variables? Yes. Now let's look at the requirements. So I know in this software what are the features that I want to build. Does it matter, right? Let's say I'm building a website. Does it matter whether I build the login feature first or login feature in the second month or login feature in the last month? Will it matter? No. Will it matter if I build my, add to cart functionality at the beginning or in the middle of the project or at the very end? No. So what am I going to do? What does that mean? It means that we have a list of features that the product should have, correct? And as long as all these features are built, it doesn't matter whether they are built in sprint 1 or sprint 2 or sprint 4 or sprint 6. So long as all those features are built prior to the release, we should be fine, correct? All right. So what do? We will, in Agile, we will put together a product backlog. Product backlog is a list of all the features this product will have. All right? So I have an entire list of product backlog. Now, of this product backlog, I am going to, right, as an Agile team, we will decide which of these features can make up a bundle of functionality, is going to be part of a sprint. Now, how do I do that? First and foremost, I must understand how big or small this feature is. So the entire, we will put together a yardstick, okay, or a scale. We will say that this feature is 2 points or 3 points, right, depending on complexity, how big or small. If you had to rate it on a scale of 1 through 5, don't we do it all? Pain level, 1 through 5. On a scale of 1 to 5, where do you think, well, how high is your pain? So same here. We have all these products, right, product feature, backlog features. We will now assign a scale. So we will say, all right, so this feature, what do I think? Complexity, 1 being very simple, 5 being very complex. Or, whatever your scale is, again, it depends on the company. What is the number that you want to assign to it? And if you decide 3, someone else thinks that it is 1. Well, why do you think it's very simple and why do you think it's so complex? We discuss, every person must talk about it. Between the 2 of us, right, if you say 1, I say 3, at least one of us is correct. We re-vote, okay? This time, hopefully, the numbers will either you have gone up to a 2 or I have gone down to a 1. Yes or no? Right? So we will vote on all of the products that are the features that are in the product backlog. And we will then say, all right, of all these features, if I say A, B, and X, Y, I can build these 4 features in sprint 1. And you add up those points, right? and say, okay, so we looks like we can build up to 20 story points in one sprint. Does that make sense? So this first one is our yardstick. We will go through the same process for the remaining features in our product backlog list. And when we bundle up the features that amount to the same story points as the very first one that we said, or sometimes some companies decide what is it that we can build, which of these functionalities, features can be built in the 4 weeks of the sprint cycle, right? So we will go through the list and say, okay, these are the 4 functionalities that I can build together as one sprint. These next 6 functionalities I can build together as a second sprint, right? So the bundles of functionality that can be built in a sprint, right, or in a 4-week time frame, in a cycle, that is called your, what is it? Do you know what it might be called? It's called your sprint backlog. That's right. It is your sprint backlog. Are you clear so far? So from product backlog, you came to a sprint backlog. So you have all of these, if you had 20 product backlogs, you have broken that, you grouped all these features into 5 sprints, right? And each sprint, the features within each sprint are these sprint backlogs. Are you clear so far? Now, as a team, why do I always say as a team? Remember, Agile, what did we say? There is no sequence, right? Everything is happening in tandem. So you and the service clerk and the technician, they're all in the same room. Yes or no? The same here. The entire Agile team will decide if they want to work on sprint 1 or sprint 3 or sprint 4, which sprint do they want to work on first. Because remember, it does not matter whether you work on sprint 1 first or 4 first, correct? Because in order for you to have a release, all of these sprints must be completed. Clear? Now, each sprint has a list of different features. Nidhi, we're getting there. Okay? Each sprint has a list of different features. So for every feature, right, while you are in a sprint, it is your sub-project. Yes or no? It is an iteration. So maybe there are 4 requirements or 4, things in your sprint backlog. Remember, even for those 4, you, the developers, the testers, we're all in it together, right? So when we say the Agile team, what does the Agile team comprise of? Well, there is no role as a project manager in Agile Scrum. Why? Because there is no one person holding the power. The Agile team is making the decisions in general. Correct? So the project manager role does not exist in Agile. Instead, we have a Scrum Master. The Scrum Master is a facilitator of the project. Okay? And I'll tell you what is it that he does. But just for now, just keep in mind that he or she is a facilitator of the project. Next, we have, typically a waterfall project will have a business analyst, right? The business analyst will talk to the customers. In Agile, the business analyst role is a little beyond what is traditionally called the business analyst, right? So in Agile teams, in Agile terms, the role is called the product owner, because you are going to be working on behalf of the SME. You know what the customer wants, right? In a sense, you are the customer, because you are giving the requirements to the developers. So companies that have Agile teams, typically, either they have their own business analysts who work as the product owners, or they have business analysts who train as SMEs for those teams, for those departments, and act on their behalf. Sometimes the business owners may assign their own SME to work with you. Are you clear? Then we have the Agile development team, right, and the testing team. So the size of an Agile team is supposed to be 4 to 7 people only. If you have too many people, then the saying of the old, have you heard, too many cooks spoil the broth? That will apply. You don't want too many people. The more people there are, the more complex the project becomes, right? More opinions. So you just want a functional group of people. So in this functional group of people, right, we are not writing big requirements. We may have analysts on the side who may write it for documentation purpose, but none of that documentation is a deliverable while you are in a sprint. The only deliverable is user stories per functionality. This is the bare minimum the developer needs to know so that he can start developing. Okay? Clear so far? So user story is what you would have to write for all the functionalities that are within the sprint. A user story has a special format. Now, of course, you stick to the format as much as possible, but there is no hard and fast rule that it must always be in this particular format. The format is, user stories are only one sentence long. They start with as a, and you got to write down the user profile. Which user is going to use this functionality? I want to, and then you write the functionality itself. Which functionality are you referring to? So that, and then you type in, why does this user want to use this functionality? To do what? Okay? So if there's one functionality and 4 different user profiles are going to be using that same functionality, you will have to write how many user stories? 4. Only has 4. Because it is going to be one user story per user profile. Okay? So as a product owner, you will have to write the user stories. Right? The reason why the user stories are a little vague, we don't need to know all the details of this functionality, right? Just yet. Why? Because if you were to go into this detailed analysis, then you'd go on this waterfall path, correct? If you spend too much time in analysis, then you're not really doing Agile. The whole purpose of Agile is that yes, you want to get, you want to start development right away, right? You want to be able to start development. You want to develop all the user profiles, right? You want to list it. So the details should come along with it, right? It should, as part of the process, right? So when I say this, if there is a functionality, something associated, I will have to list it all, right? I will have to write the user story. And what happens is that one conversation will lead to another, to another, to another. Are you clear? Right. So the user stories are a little vague, simply because we want to develop. Now, once all the user stories, we are not going to wait. Development is not going to wait until you, as the product owner, have finished writing all the user stories. Remember, you are telling the problems, the service technician is taking notes, the service clerk is taking notes, and the technician is looking under the hood of the car. So all things happening at the same time, right? So what does that mean? Well, let's say that there were 4 functionalities in that sprint. You started writing the user stories for functionality 1, right? Maybe there were 4 user stories for that functionality. As you wrote the first one, the developers have started working on the first user story. The tester will start writing the acceptance criteria, the test plan for that user story. Are you clear? Once you've written the user stories for the first functionality, you move on to the second. In the same time, the developer may have finished for the first functionality. If there were four user stories, he may have finished 2 out of those 4. 2 out of those 4 functionalities that have already been developed will be put into the bucket for the tester. So they will start testing the 2 that have already been done. So if you notice, you are still writing user stories. The development team is doing development, and the tester is doing testing all at the same time at any given point of time. Yes or no? This is where development is happening in tandem. Are you clear? Now, while you are in a sprint, there is no way that your sprint can get extended. Your sprint cycle will always remain what it was. So if you've decided a 4-week cycle, you must complete whatever is in your sprint in that cycle. Your scope of the sprint does not change. Typically, it does not. If you've said that this is what we will develop in sprint 1, then you are committed to that. Only in the very rare chance that you thought that you could build a functionality, you gave it 2 points when really it was 4 points. Meaning to say that instead of building 20 points in that sprint, you now have to deal with 22, 24 points in the sprint. There's no way you can finish it, right? You don't think you will be able to complete this cycle. Then, and only then, do you swap out that functionality with something else in the sprint backlog that you had assigned 2 points. Are you clear? Because remember, if you develop less in this sprint, it means that your other sprints are also back to back, right? If you don't develop something else in this instead of this one here, then what happens to this extra one? How will you accommodate this one in the remaining sprints. Is it possible to do it? No. So this should only happen as a rare case scenario. Okay? And if it does not mean that you finish the sprint in 3 weeks, because your cycle is 4 weeks. You must do whatever it is, story points. Now, why do we have story points instead of just 4 requirements or 6 requirements? Look at login, right? Registration and login feature. Now, of course, we will have to build it. But do you think that will take the same time as add to cart functionality? So can I really say 4 features per sprint? Because some of these features are very simple. Some features can take you an exact 4 weeks, just one feature to develop. Other times you may have 4 features which will take you 1 week to develop. Yes or no? Right? So what we do is we have story points. That is why we assign story points. Okay? Are you clear? That's right, it depends on the complexity of the features. Now, how do we know? Typically, when we have product backlog, right, those features in the product backlogs are called epics. Every feature, right, is an epic. When we break it down into functionalities, we are supposed to break it down into the sprint backlog, right? And when we write that down, we're supposed to write user stories. So we are supposed to break it down to the lowest denominator possible. Are you clear? It can't be at an epic level. Is there any point if I were to write user stories at an epic level? Will you be able to understand the complexity of this feature? No. Right? So it must be at a very granular level. And then for every functionality, right? And then I must write the user stories. So I have my sprint 1, sprint 2, of course, if in the rare chance, if for whatever reason, a calculations went wrong and I can develop an item that's on my sprint backlog for this sprint, then I've got to swap it out. Otherwise, the scope of the sprint is pretty much fixed. Right? Yes or no? So in the next 4-week cycle, I'm going through the analysis, which is writing the user stories, the development and the testing all at the same time. Right? It's all happening in parallel. As I write the user stories, I'm writing the user stories. The developers are working on the user stories that have been predefined, right? Already been defined so far. And the testers are testing all the functionality that has been developed by the developer so far, right? As and when my functionalities are complete at the end of the sprint, there will be a show and tell session. Okay? This is going to be a demo of all the functionalities that were built as part of that sprint. Again, the entire project team, it is the show and tell session. Okay? This is another session where the entire project team is going to participate. As we go through, yes, it is working, right? This is how we do it. Do you think that works as a UAT test? Yes or no? Right? So it serves as a UAT. Once a sprint is complete, we will never go back to that sprint. So you cannot leave a sprint half done. The sprint must be complete. Let's see, we've talked about different kinds of testing. In session 2, user acceptance testing. Okay? All right. So you cannot leave a sprint halfway done and say, oh, I'll come back to the sprint. Okay, after sprint 3. No, that is not possible. At the end of sprint 6, we will integrate all the different functionalities and release them as part of the release. We will put them into production as part of the release. Are you clear? All right. So far, what have we learned? Agile team is 4 to 7 people long, big, right? Agile team has a Scrum Master, Product Owner, and the team members constituted of, which consists of the developers and the QA. Yes or no? In Agile team, there is no power. The entire Agile team has power. So the project manager is not the one managing the project. It is the entire project. It is the entire Agile team that has the power, right? So the power is decentralized. The project owner, typically what would be the project owner in a waterfall project is the Scrum Master here with less power. Okay, he or she is the facilitator. The business analyst has more power than what typically happens in the waterfall project, right? Because he or she is also acting on behalf of the business. He or she is the SME. In some instances, is also the customer. Clear? It is the development team that decides which features, the entire project team really, but it is, which ones are they going to, which sprint are they going to build first? It is the entire project team that breaks down the product backlog into sprint backlogs. Yes or no? While we in every sprint, the features that are included in that sprint, we will only write user stories, right? We will write user stories per user profile for each requirement. A bundle of features or functionality that can be built within a sprint, right? Or within a certain time frame, within a time box is called a sprint. Clear? And it is called the sprint backlog. These sprints are time boxes, depending on the size, depending on the company. They could be a 2-week cycle, 2-week sprint cycle. It could be a 4-week sprint cycle. It could be a 6-week sprint cycle, which is predetermined based on the number of releases that you will have in a year. The scope of the sprint is always fixed. Once you've decided, right, based on the user stories, that this is what will constitute a sprint, the scope does not change. However, in the rare chance that you were wrong, right, and you assign user story points to a certain functionality and you were off, then you can't just deliver a sprint earlier or sooner. You must swap out that functionality with something else so that you can still complete all your sprints on time. Does that make sense? So how does it all work together? Well, first and foremost, when we start out with an Agile project, we have the product backlog meeting. You are allowed to, Nidhi, you are allowed to swap in the very off chance that you were wrong. Okay? Otherwise, your sprint, the scope of the sprint is pretty much fixed. I'm going to your blog. Give me 1 minute while I log in. Have any of you had a chance to go to your blog? Read up the information that I already have there? Alright. So first and foremost, like I mentioned, this is where I want you to read it. First and foremost, we will have to understand what are the features this software will have. So we have a product backlog meeting, right? Yes or no? Once we have our product backlog meeting, then we will figure out the sprint backlog. What are the different, things that we need to build for that feature? Yes or no? So for example, now what does that mean? Product backlog features are, let's say search for an item, right? High level on a website. Now, is that an epic or is it a user story? Look at it this way. You can search for an item different ways, can't you? You can search for an item using your search bar and typing in keywords. You can search for an item by typing in the product ID. You can search for an item by browsing through, right? Yes or no? So can I just write user stories that search at the level search for an item? No. I will have to break it down, right, into smaller functionalities. Remember how we broke down our business requirement into functional requirements? Everyone remember that? Yes. So we're doing the same thing here. So we will put together our list, right? Now that we have broken it down, now we are going to assign points, user points. Why? Because some functionalities are more complex than the others, right? So we are going to use a scale and assign user stories. Based on those, or assign user story points. Based on the points, we will then figure out which of these features can be built in the 4 weeks or the, whatever the time box is. Which ones do we think we can build within our time box? And that is your sprint backlog. Yes or no? Once we have our sprint backlog, then the agile team will decide which of those sprints, right, that we have logical groupings, right, of sprint backlogs. Which one are we going to start working on first? All right, and that is the sprint that we start developing. Are you clear? Now, when we start developing, what does that mean? We will have daily Scrum meetings. All right, because even while I know that I will have to do a search by keyword, right, or search by browse, is that enough information for the developer? No, because I will have to write down who are the different user profiles, who can use this functionality, right, and why will they want to use it? Yes or no? Okay, so I'm going to meet on a daily basis Remember, my project or this sprint, the cycle itself is 4 weeks long, right? If I don't communicate on a daily basis, do you think I will be able to accomplish all of these, 10 different features? Can I build all those 10 different features in one sprint? No. So there has to be daily communication within the Agile team, right? So we are going to have a Scrum meeting. In that Scrum, we will discuss our features, right? We can take it, we can have one meeting where we discuss all the features, or we can discuss one feature per meeting. So today I'm talking about feature 1 in the sprint, right? We will discuss it. The developers will ask their questions. Remember how we had you, the customer, the service clerk, and the technician all in one room talking, right? What is the problem? How are we same here? Okay, so we will discuss our feature. Once we've done that, everybody has a takeaway, right? Action item. So my job is, as a product owner, to write out the user stories. Developers, they have enough information, they've taken enough notes from the conversation that we had in the Scrum to start developing. The QA has enough information to start putting together the acceptance criteria, right? Now, in tomorrow's meeting, we can discuss problems that we have, right? While, let's see, did you want to ask something? Because you are, let's see, all of you are unmuted. Hal? Hal, you logged in twice. You want me to expel the other one? Okay. I can, hold on. So if I stop sharing, then I should be. So I'm going to expel. Oh, I think you fixed it yourself. All right. So Nehal, you are unmuted again. So what will happen is, in the next meeting, right, in our next stand-up, which is, because it is daily, we will talk about what did you do yesterday? Do you have a roadblock? Is there any obstacle, right? What did you accomplish? Do you need any help? Right? So again, all that conversation, we will talk to each other. If you need any further clarification on the stuff that was discussed yesterday, then we will discuss it, right? I will provide you with clarifications. If you need any help, then I will give you, we'll find out more help. So it will depend on the kind of questions, right? So if you have an obstacle, then it is the job of the Scrum Master to find out how to fix that obstacle. If you're waiting on somebody else, sometimes a developer may need some other developer's help, right? Yes or no? Sometimes we have things to be done in the database. Sometimes we may need another developer to drop this message somewhere, right? So if we are waiting on somebody, then how is the other developer supposed to know that you are waiting on him? So this is why we have these Scrum meetings. If the developer, the other one, is not available, it is the job of the Scrum Master to go and communicate. Are you clear? Now, why do we have daily scrum? The first, the idea is to be able to communicate. If you can't communicate in this such a short time frame, then you will never accomplish your entire sprint, right? But you must always remember, the sprint meeting is only supposed to last for 15 minutes. Why? Because your sprints are so small and you're meeting on a daily basis. Do you really need more than 15 minutes? Do you think you would have enough to talk for? I mean, all of you, right? You've talked to your family. If you were to talk to them every day, do you really need to talk for more than 15 minutes? Would you have enough information to talk, to share? No, right? Same here. You don't need more than 15 minutes. You really need to be more efficient, right? That's the whole point of Agile, to be very lean and efficient. So we really need 15 minutes. That's all you need. 6 people, 2 minutes, 3 minutes per person. Do you need anything? What did you accomplish? What are you working on right now? Do you have a roadblock? Do you need any help? Okay. Now, this is also called your daily stand-up. Why? Because our Scrum meetings, we are not supposed to sit down. We're supposed to just stand, talk, and disband. Why is that? Well, one of the reasons is, when we were analyzing on how to get things done faster, one thing that jumped out was we waste so much time, right? Meeting. What does that mean? Well, when you have all these, when you meet once a week, you schedule a 1-hour meeting. People are running late to your meeting. They haven't done their homework. They don't know that they are going to be talking to, that they have some action items. They are not prepared. They come late. While they're coming late, the others have gotten comfortable in their chairs. They're talking about the weather. They're talking about their family. The others join them. They're also sucked into the same conversation. By the time you call everybody, to focus on the agenda, right, you've lost 15 minutes. Yes or no? So then you start talking on the agenda and you get distracted. You're not focused on the item at hand, but on the long-term implications and whatnot, right? So we are not focused on the agenda items anymore, but we get distracted. When you get distracted, you lose another 15 minutes because you can't cut people off in the middle of the sentence saying, this is not. We can't discuss this at the start, can you? So that's another 15 minutes lost. And then, so you lost 15 minutes in the very beginning. You only spoke for 15 minutes on the topic, and then you also got distracted for 15 minutes, right? And then, so you've used up 45 minutes of your 1 hour. Towards the last 15 minutes, people are already getting fidgety, right? They're checking their Blackberries, they're checking their schedules because they know they have to make it to another meeting, right? So you've lost them. Besides, you're doing a summary of who's doing what and who's going to follow up on what. So that's the last 15 minutes. So in a sense, how long did you actually talk on the subject at hand, what on your agenda? What was the true time that you spent on the agenda? 15 minutes, right? So if that is the case, then if we have to get lean, if we have to be more agile, all we really need is 15 minutes. Let's meet for 15 minutes every day. We will talk about the stuff related to the project, related to my sprint, related to the functionality that I'm working on, and disband. There is no other conversation anymore. Okay? The daily stand-up meeting will always happen at a fixed time in a fixed venue. It does not change ever. Okay? The schedule, the venue will always remain the same, so that people don't have to worry about, oh, where am I meeting now? Okay? What time is our sprint today? Our stand-up meeting today? You don't have to worry about it. It's always on the clock, 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock, whatever you decide. Always one place, same place, same time. Okay? 15 minutes. It always starts on time. You do not wait for anybody. If they're not there, they've lost their turn. Does that make sense? Now, who attends this meeting? Well, anyone can come to your meeting, but only the Agile team can talk during the meeting. Why? Because they are the only ones that are really contributing and working on the project. This meeting is for them to communicate what have they completed so far, what are they working on right now, do they need more information, do they need any help? Okay? No one else can talk. Are you clear so far? Now, this place where we have our daily stand-ups will have many boards on them. Right? It could be a corkboard, it could be a whiteboard. What is the purpose of those boards? One of these boards is going to be dedicated to your product backlog. All right? In Agile, because we are not focusing on documentation, all our product features are going to be listed either on post-it notes or on index cards. Have you seen index cards in the stationery aisle? Yes, no, maybe. All right. So we will have all the product features or the product backlog on one board. Okay. The second board is, and the same board can also have your sprint backlogs, all the various sprints. So you may have, sprint 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all the sprints that you plan. Are you clear? And these product backlogs, now you may not have planned up to sprint 6. You may only have planned up to sprint 2, right? You may only have figured out the sprint backlog for sprint 2. So the other features that you have not assigned to a sprint yet are going to reside in your product backlog section. Yes or no? So as and when you define your sprint 3, the post-its or the index cards will move from the product backlog portion of the board onto the sprint section. Are you clear? And will constitute your sprint backlog. Next, another board will be dedicated to the sprint that you are working on right now. In that sprint, on that board, you are going to break down your sprint backlog into user stories. So if you had four items, 4 features in your sprint backlog, and every feature, let's say on an average, right, 4 user stories per feature in your backlog, how many user stories is that? Guys, basic math. Very nice. Okay, so you are going to start putting, so you have your sprint, right, whatever your sprint number is, and then you will have your user stories as and when you finish your user stories, right? You will have your sprint backlog, the index cards, and as you write your user stories for it, you will attach those user stories to that sprint backlog. Are you clear? Now, as you attach your cue cards or post-its to the sprint section, your user stories, the developer will pick whichever user story he is going to start working on. He will move it from the user story section to his section in development. So that board that we're talking about will have not yet developed, not yet started, where you're putting together, posting your user stories. Then we will have another column which will have in development. Next column will be ready for testing, right? And the last is complete. So as you post more user stories in your column, the developer is going to move that user story to his section, right? And there's more than one developer, so there may be more than one user story being moved from the not yet started section to the in development section. Yes, no, maybe. The tester is also putting together the acceptance criteria. Clear? All right. As the developer, now there could be 2 developers or 3. Let's say developer 1 has finished his development, right? He is going to move the user story from the in development section to the ready to be tested, which when the QA person looks at the board, he knows, oh, I need to test it, right? So he is going to use his acceptance criteria and going to test it. If it passes, he will move that user story from the ready to be tested section to the complete section. And this is the chain, right, that happens continuously until all the user stories move from not yet started and are ultimately in the complete bucket. Are you clear? At the end of this sprint, we have a sprint review. How did we do, right? At this sprint review meeting, we are going to present, remember the show and tell that we were talking about? This is where all the stakeholders will be in the room and we are going to show the stakeholders what was developed, right? How does the functionality work? And at the end of this review, we mark the sprint as complete. Are you clear? Of course, once we have finished our sprint, we must also look at how did we do in our sprint, right? Lessons learned. How can we improve in our next sprint? That is called a sprint retrospective. Are you clear? Now, sometimes you may realize that your sprint, I have a spelling mistake here, that we thought that we will be able to do 20 user story points, right? However, for 2 sprints in a row, we could only complete 18 story points. What does it tell us? That our estimates are a little off, aren't they? We've got to find the perfect number of story points and the perfect way to assign story points. Correct? Are you clear? So that is what happens in our sprint retrospective. Now, this venue that I talked about, the daily Scrum stand-up meeting, remember we had these 2 boards, right? So anybody who would like to know more about the project and attend the meeting, they are more than welcome to show up. Remember, they can't talk. They can't ask questions because this is not their forum. If they want to get a project update, what are they supposed to do? You're supposed to go and scan the walls, scan the boards, because all the updates are there on the board, right? Because if they look at the board, they know exactly what are the features that have not been planned yet. We haven't put them in a sprint just now, right? They know which ones have already been planned in the sprint, which sprint are we working on on the sprint that we are working on, what are the different user stories that have been defined so far. Of those user stories, which ones are in development, which ones are in testing, and which ones have been tested? Yes or no? So the entire project status update is on the board. Do they need a project manager to provide status updates in this case? No. Clear? Everyone clear? All right. Who can tell me why we use index cards or post-its? And I'm going to mute you. I think there is some disturbance. I don't know if it is from your end or not, but there is some disturbance, okay? And I don't know why I can't mute you at all. Yes, Nehal, you are right. It is small and concise. It is to the point. Besides, it is also the agile approach, right? So if you change your mind then about a requirement, then you can simply tear up, take the post-it off the wall, tear it up and apply a new post-it, right? Now in Agile, remember the features of the product. You can change your mind anytime you want, so long as you are not impacting the sprint that we are working on. Does it matter? I'm sorry, guys. Can you still hear me? Remember, I'm also fighting a summer cold, right? I didn't mean to blow in your ear, but so if I were to change one of the requirements in the product backlog list, would it impact you? Does it matter to you? Does it? Let's look at this way. Let me give you an example. No, that's right, Lipsy. Let's look at an example. Let's just assume that you had to go to, you had to do some shopping, right? You planned on going to one of these stationery shops, a toy shop, Toys R Us, and a JCPenney, right? You are at JCPenney right now. If I were to change one of the items that you are, if I were to, delete one of the items that you are supposed to buy at Toys R Us, right? Or add a new item instead that you should buy at Toys R Us, does it impact you at all? No, right? Because the change, I haven't gotten to that point yet. It doesn't matter if I'm going to Toys R Us, if you change one of the requirements, if you swap one of those, it doesn't matter, right? That is the beauty of Agile. You can change your mind, your requirements at any time. So long as it does not impact the sprint that you are working on, you are okay. What else? The other thing is, you don't have to wait until you know you've analyzed every requirement. You can start development right away. And that is the reason why we keep our user stories very simple and very vague, right? Because if I were to go into granular details, especially if I were to tell you exactly how this feature works, then it's going to take me some time, right? And while I'm doing that analysis, do you think the development team can do anything? Can get started? No. So if I do such detailed analysis, then the development team is waiting and twiddling their thumbs. In which case, work is not happening in tandem anymore. On the other hand, if I just leave it at a user level, right, then I am going to build, right, as part of our scrums, we will meet every day. We will explore everything as we go. What else needs to be built, correct? Everyone clear so far? So this is the agile approach, okay? Agile allows you to implement changes as you go, as you're doing the project. Change is part of the project. It is understood that your business may change their mind. The deliverables is limited only to the software. We are not focusing on documentation, all right? Documents are not your deliverables. It's the only deliverable that you have is your software. And for that purpose, we have time-boxed the entire development process. Development does not happen in phases. Although all the activities that you typically do in waterfall also happen here. It's just that it is not happening in a sequence. Are you clear? So do you see the advantages? Can you tell me what the advantages are? That's right. Development time is less. You can incorporate change, flexibility, right? Satisfaction. Agile team, because it's the team, the development team, that decides what they want to build on, what are they going to work on, what are they, how big or small this effort is going to be. No one is forcing them to develop it in 3 months, right? Yes or no? Development can begin almost immediately. You don't have to wait. There is no reason to have unnecessary documentation, right? You don't have to waste time and effort on project management activities, status updates. Customer satisfaction is really high. Why? Because the development is happening fast. It is happening for the product features that they are interested in. Clear? Now, even though this is all happening, it is still not the, it is, no methodology is the best. You still have some drawbacks to every methodology, right? Yes or no? So agile projects can also fail. Why? If you have a team that does not know how to build in agile, can you imagine? They don't understand how agile works. They don't understand the concept of Scrum. So remember, just because you are meeting for 15 minutes every day doesn't mean that you are agile. Agile is a way of building software, okay? You just can't meet every day and go back to your waterfall method. Every person on the agile team must take the burden of meeting these sprint deliverables. So if one person on the agile team falls sick or falls behind, the others must pitch in. There is nothing called, oh, this is not my job. In agile, it is everyone's job. So if the Scrum Master is not there, somebody else will stand up as a Scrum Master. All right, somebody else must take the leadership. Remember, it is the entire project team that is making the decision, right? So if you have an unreliable team, do you think it will work? No. If you don't have proper leaders, so Scrum Master is really, anybody can be a Scrum Master, which means that everybody on the Agile project team, right, should be self-sufficient, should be a self-starter. They should know, no one's going to ask them, did you finish this task? Did you start this task? They should know by themselves what can they start working on, what is, what their next goal is going to be, right? They should be able to speak for themselves and say, all right, this will be 2 story points or 5 story points, right? So everyone on the project team has to be a leader. Are you clear? If not everybody can be that leader, then the agile team, the agile project will not work. If the product owner does not know what we want to build, right? Who is going to be using this? Remember, as it is, the agile user stories are very vague. On top of it, if you don't know if these features are going to meet your objectives or not, if your product backlog is wrong, do you think your agile project will still be successful? Ultimately, you must meet the objectives, right? Your user stories, there's a reason why we keep our user stories really vague, but it does not mean that the development is limited, right? While we are developing, that's the whole point. We have these daily stand-ups, right? We must analyze as we go. What else does it impact? What else do we need to build? What are the different tasks? So instead of putting together a work breakdown structure at the very beginning, right, of the project, we are doing a work breakdown structure as we write our user stories, right? The developer must put together, must break down, oh, so for this user story, I need to do X, Y, Z, P, Q, R. He must have a list of things that he will have to develop. So sometimes people forget that user stories, right, are different than requirements, functional requirements. You can't expect functional requirements as user stories. Are you clear? Then another, drawback of Agile is burnout rate. Remember, Agile is very intense. Even this entire team, they meet on a daily basis, but only for 15 minutes, and they just talk work and nothing else but work, right? The whole point of sprint retrospective is to see how efficient can you make this sprint. So if you realize that yes, you were able to, complete 20 story points very comfortably, then you want to shoot for 22 or 24 user stories, story points in the next sprint. You want to constantly increase the efficiency of your sprint cycle, right? Which puts a lot of pressure on the entire team. There is no downtime, is there? So there are many times when people, they work on agile projects for a couple of years and then they move out of it because it's not possible. Can you give your 100% 52 weeks in a year? Can you be at 100% 52 weeks in a year? No. But that's what agile requires. Every sprint, and a sprint is on a day-to-day basis, right? You have such small goals. You're supposed to meet your goals on a daily basis in order to be able to complete your sprint in time. And the sprints go on and on and on. Remember, there's no downtime at all. Now again, the other flip side of the coin is those who work on agile projects, they love it. Why? Because they manage themselves, right? They manage their work. And they get the satisfaction of doing it well, right? They make their own deadlines, they meet their own deadlines, and of course, when the project is successful, it is them, they get the credit. Because they owned the project, the entire project team owned the project. It wasn't just the project manager who took the project to a success, right? It is the project team. So in an agile project, the Scrum Master can't claim to have delivered a project properly, in time and on budget. Are you clear? Everyone? Do you know how this model works now? So I have more information. I have talked about this. In fact, the slide that I'm sharing with you right now, I've shared this also, right? Please go on the blog, marry up the information that's on the blog with what's on the slide, with what I have talked to you about. And then, remember, you will have to talk for 3.5 minutes on Agile Scrum. If you notice, I have been talking for almost 2 hours on Agile Scrum. You should know Agile Scrum really, really well. Do you think I have given you sufficient information to talk for 3.5 minutes? All right. Now, I don't know why the others are not in class today. I know Shadab is probably listening in. That's Colin user 6. And then I have Lipsy, Nehal, Nidhi, and Ryan. I wonder where the others are today. Okay. So this is Agile Scrum. Now we talked about there's another, Agile is, there are various approaches. Scrum was one approach. Another Agile approach is extreme programming, right? Extreme programming is more of the software engineering technique. Extreme programming, like Agile, this is an Agile approach, right? So yes, we do have time boxes here as well. However, the time boxes are not called sprints, they are called releases. Okay? And within each release, we are doing things, we have all these different phases. extreme programming, the time boxes are not as huge as Scrum. The time boxes are really 1 to 2 weeks. And when we have releases, the releases are based on the priority of the product features. So what will happen is we will have a product backlog. We will prioritize our product backlog. Our business units will say which product, which feature do they want us to build first, all right? And we will determine if that feature can be built in the 2 weeks time box that we have or not. If it can, if that one feature will take 2 weeks, then that is our release 1. If we can bundle up that feature with other features and still release it in 2 weeks, then that is our release 1. So this is more on a priority that is defined by the business unit. Whereas Scrum, it was the Agile team, the Scrum team, that decided whether, which sprint they want to work on first. Yes or no? In extreme programming, because your scope of each release is small, right? So you don't have too much documentation. You are going through user stories. You are writing user stories. The users will describe the acceptance criteria. It relies heavily on the testing approach. So you build, as you see, we have these 7 phases, right? It depends on the success of every release will depend on the success criteria, the acceptance criteria defined by the users. Are you clear? So it's not the same as your Scrum, isn't it? Scrum has more autonomy. Extreme programming is still a hybrid, isn't it? It is kind of waterfall with some agile. It's an incremental model, right? Extreme programming can be used in conjunction with your Scrum approach because they're 2 totally different concepts. So while we are in development, right, when we are doing sprints, when we are working on our user stories, the Agile team may decide of all the user stories which one is most important, and they may decide to work on that one. All right? So Agile Scrum, you can apply extreme programming while you are doing it using Agile Scrum method. Are you clear? The only difference in that case would be the Agile team is deciding which one is higher priority. Or we can ask the customers to tell us which one is higher priority. So we can implement extreme programming while we are using Agile Scrum. It's up to us. Everyone clear so far? Now, unlike Scrum, every time we have a new release, all the previous releases must be retested. Why? Because you're building on top of the other release. In Scrum, you are building in sprints. When you build sprint 2, are you retesting sprint 1? No. That's what I said, right? Remember? We never go back to that same sprint. So, extreme programming, you have a release 1, release 2. When you go with release 2, you must also retest release 1. In Agile Scrum, you don't do that. Alright? Are you clear? So this is about our agile methodology, of which Scrum is more famous than extreme programming. And even while we do Scrum, like I said, you can have elements of extreme programming into your agile Scrum. Everyone clear so far? Yes, Neha.
Pooja, I am confused about this. As you said that while we are doing the um, Scrum, we can incorporate some part of Extreme. But where I'm confused is in Scrum, as you said, we have to go script by script, and in the very beginning, we decide the time period for the script for the sprint. So how do we incorporate an extreme programming in between? Because extreme programming would again have a different priority, and we already have a fixed schedule for the sprint.
So when you are developing, right, the user stories are already defined. When you are developing, if within your sprint you have 4 features and 16 user stories, right, between them, you can start developing on, if you were to use just Scrum, you can start developing on any of those user stories, right? You can just do a eeny, meeny, miny, mo and pick any one user story in random. Yes or no, Neha? However, do you think really, is that how people work? If you had to do something, Neha, right, chances are that you would pick the most important first, or the most important one first, right? Take care of it, right? That is the extreme programming approach, isn't it? It's based on priority, right? Now, change. Remember, when we are talking about change within the, talking about adding, changing, editing, deleting requirements or features in the product backlog in the upcoming sprint, not the sprint that we are in right now. The only time change in the current sprint is allowed is when you have, you have 4 features in the current sprint, and you assign 2 story points to one of those features, and later realize that there is no way I can build this. This is not really 2 story points, but it is 4. It is twice as much work, and I will not be able to finish it. Then and only then can you swap that feature with something else that also has 2 story points. What are the chances that both of those story points are, both evaluations are wrong, right? Chances are that the other one you can do, it is actually 2 story points, you'll be able to finish it. Yes or no, Nehal? Okay, so that is the only time you can change the scope of your current sprint, right? Upcoming sprint, sure, you can move it. I know, I think that is Shadab, I think that is you. I'm going to mute you, all right? Everyone clear? So at this point, guys, I'm going to give you a 10-minute break, 15-minute break, all right? And then we will learn about some other methodologies. 15 minutes, that's right. It is 5 minutes to 11 my time. At 10 past 11, we will start and we will go through some more methodologies, okay? All right. Because the remaining are also very, very, critical. I know the 2-hour session on Agile, I know that was pretty intense. I want you to take a break and come back in 15 minutes. All right, 15 minutes, guys. The time starts now.